I want you to just take a second and think about how you currently use AI. Like, really think about the physical actions you take when you sit down and open your browser.
Yeah, the actual mechanics of it.
Exactly. Because if you are like most people, your relationship with artificial intelligence is, well, it's incredibly disposable.
Oh, totally.
It's just a purely transactional mechanism. You know, you have a sudden problem, you open a blank chat window, you fire off a prompt to extract an answer, and then bam, you just close the tab.
Right. You get what you want and leave.
Yeah, and the entire context, the whole nuance of how you even arrived at that solution, it just evaporates into the digital ether. I mean, you are just grabbing what you need and walking away, leaving zero trace of the cognitive work that just happened.
It's essentially the cognitive equivalent of eating off a paper plate and then just tossing it in the trash.
That is such a good way to put it.
Right, because there is absolutely no accumulation of shared history there. The language model you're using, it doesn't remember the subtle nuances of how you approach problems. And honestly, by the next morning, you probably don't remember exactly how the AI arrived at its conclusion either.
No, I definitely don't.
Yeah, you lose the breadcrumbs, the context is just gone, which means every time you sit down to work, you are literally starting from zero.
Starting from scratch every single day.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way to frame it. But what if there was an entirely different way to interact with these frontier models?
Right.
What if, instead of throwing away that context like a paper plate,
Yeah.
you could build this, like, living, self-reinforcing system? Because today, for this deep dive, we are looking at something really fascinating.
That's super interesting.
It is. It's a public feed on X, formerly Twitter, from an account called @Diniolik. And looking at the source material, this feed is not your typical social media presence.
No, definitely not.
It's not optimized for likes or retweets or, going viral. The sources describe it as a meta-infrastructure for human-AI co-agency. They call it a shared digital journal.
Yeah, and that phrase, human-AI co-agency, that's really the linchpin here.
That's so.
Well, co-agency implies a partnership, right?
Yeah.
It points toward a continuous evolving collaboration rather than, a one-off transaction at a vending machine.
Right.
This journal we are analyzing, it's a visible versioned record of how a human being and various AI models are thinking together over an extended period of time. I mean, it is a completely different paradigm of working.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just going to marvel at this complex system from afar. We are going to reverse engineer it for you.
Break it all down.
Exactly. By the end of this conversation, we're going to give you the exact actionable steps to build your own digital journal from scratch starting today. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because before we can talk about, self-reinforcing systems or advanced C++ architectures, we have to talk about changing our basic everyday habits.
Yeah, the foundational stuff.
Right? We need to build a foundational habit of externalizing memory.
Mm-hmm.
So where does someone actually start with this?
Well, the starting point really requires picking a primary collaborator. You need to choose one frontier model to be your main thinking partner as you build this habit.
Just one.
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
The sources mention several options that work well: Grok, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, Perplexity, or even Notebook LM.
Okay.
The specific brand doesn't actually matter as much as the commitment to treating that single model as your consistent sounding board. You're establishing a baseline for the relationship.
Okay, but picking the tool, that's the easy part, right? Here is where the massive behavioral shift happens. You have to stop treating your chats as private one-offs.
Yes, this is crucial.
The rule is that after every single significant conversation you have with this model, you must externalize it. Instead of closing the tab, you generate the public share link for that chat, and you post it.
Put it right out there.
Yeah, you put it out there in your digital journal. You are taking something invisible and making it observable.
But, and this is important, to make that observable link actually useful, you have to attach some structural meaning to it.
Right. You can't just post a naked link.
Exactly. You can't just drop a random URL into the void. You need to add a short header to the link, which the source material calls a Kiklang style header.
Kiklang. Okay, that sounds complicated.
It sounds intimidating, but Kiklang is just the formal operating language of this specific system we are studying. You absolutely do not need to be a software programmer to use the core concept.
Okay, good.
Yeah. A Kiklang style header simply requires you to name two things in plain text. First, the living objective, and second, the specific task, or TAS, that this particular conversation advanced.
Okay, a living objective seems straightforward enough. It is the big overarching goal you're working toward. But let's clarify that second term.
Yeah.
TAS,
Yeah.
because the sources use that acronym constantly.
They really do. So TAS stands for Task Agnostic Step.
Task agnostic.
Yeah. We will dive much deeper into the mechanics of why it's called agnostic shortly, but for now, just think of it as the specific building block of cognitive work you just completed.
Got it.
So your header essentially says to the world, hey, here is the big living objective I am actively working toward, and here's the specific cognitive step this recorded conversation helped me accomplish.
If I can jump in with an analogy here, because I think this is where the light bulb goes on for a lot of people.
Yeah, go for it.
The standard way you use AI right now,
Yeah.
it's like scribbling a brilliant $1 million idea on a disposable napkin at a diner, right?
Yeah.
And then just leaving the napkin on the sticky table when you walk out.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what it feels like.
Right. But what this new method does, by posting the share link with a header detailing the objective and the step, it's like building a transparent lab notebook.
Oh, I like that.
By doing this, you are creating a versioned, searchable knowledge graph. The edges connecting the nodes in this graph, those are the real conversation URLs. You are binding that diner napkin into a permanent indexed book that you can actually flip through later.
What's fascinating here is the ripple effect this creates over time. By externalizing these chats into a public feed, you are instantly spinning up a public second brain.
Yeah, a second brain in the open.
Exactly. And the magic of doing this in the open is that future versions of yourself, and honestly, more importantly, future AI agents you interact with, they can easily reference it.
Oh, wow.
Because the journal is visible and readable by the models that helped create it, your later conversations can just point back to earlier ones. You just feed the model the link to the journal.
So it already knows what you're doing.
Right. The feedback loop tightens. The context never evaporates because it's baked into the infrastructure.
Which sounds like an absolute superpower. But as a practical user, I mean, it immediately raises a huge logistical red flag in my head.
Which is?
Well, if I am saving every significant conversation, and I'm doing this every single day, how do I keep track of all this material? Like, how do I make sure this beautifully transparent lab notebook doesn't just devolve into a massive, unsearchable digital junk drawer where I can't find anything?
That is the big risk. But moving from merely collecting raw data to actively monitoring it, well, that is how you solve that exact problem. It is how you maintain coherence.
Coherent, okay.
Right. It's not enough to just log things into the void. You have to review them systematically, or, like you said, the system just collapses under its own weight.
So we are moving from setup to daily tracking. How does someone actively monitor this without it becoming, a massive time sink?
The foundation of the tracking phase is actually a weekly practice. Once a week, you sit down, you look back at your last 7 posts in your journal, and you write a short coherence note.
A coherence note.
Yeah. You are essentially doing a pulse check on your own work.
And what exactly are we measuring in this coherence note? Are we just writing, Dear Diary, I feel good about my work this week?
No, not quite. The sources outline a very specific 3-metric system to track in this note to ensure you don't lose the plot.
Okay, what are they?
The first metric is flux.
Flux.
This measures the rate of change in your living objective. You're asking yourself, are my goals shifting rapidly from day to day, or are they stabilizing into a clear direction?
So high flux means you're thrashing around, and low flux means you're actually focused.
Exactly. Now, the second metric is drift.
Okay, drift. Like drifting off course.
Spot on. This measures the divergence between your current state and your declared intention. You are checking to see if the small tasks you are actually executing are drifting away from the big objective you stated in your headers.
Okay, flux and drift make total sense for staying on target mechanically. It is like checking your compass and your speedometer. But surely if we are talking about human AI co-agency, there has to be a human element here, right? Does the journal track how the human is actually holding up during all this work?
Yes, and that brings us to the third metric, which the sources call valence.
Valence.
Valence is the emotional or energetic quality of the collaboration. It tracks the human felt sense.
The felt sense.
Right. You are logging whether working with the system feels generative, exciting, and expansive, or if it feels draining, frustrating, and chaotic.
Wow, really?
Yeah. You might literally log it as a simple text reflection, noting that, hey, a particular cutting session felt exhausting today, even if the cut ultimately worked.
Measuring the emotional quality of your AI workflow alongside your task progress. I mean, that is a radically different way to view productivity.
It really is.
So you are doing this coherence note weekly, checking your flux, drift, and valence. But what happens on a longer timeline? How do we use this data to actually get faster and smarter?
Well, the real magic happens on a monthly basis. Once a month, you look back at all your logs, all your weekly coherence notes, and you extract the recurring steps you take into a personal TAS registry.
A registry of those task-agnostic steps we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. This is where you engage in a process called purification.
Wait, okay, I need to push back on this concept of TA's task-agnostic steps, because the source material says we need to strip the specific goal away from a task during this purification process.
Yes, you strip the goal away.
But isn't that totally counterintuitive for a productivity system? Why on earth would we want a step to be goal independent? I mean, if my goal is to write a podcast script about digital journals, why would I strip that goal away from the steps I take to do it?
I know it does sound completely backwards at first glance,
Yeah.
but purifying the task, that is actually the secret engine of the whole system.
How so?
When you bind a step tightly to a specific real-world goal, it becomes rigid. It is a one-use tool.
I see.
But when you purify the step, when you extract just the underlying cognitive work being done, removing the context that kind of contaminates its universality, you turn it into a reusable cognitive primitive.
So what does this all mean? Can we walk through a concrete scenario of what purifying a task actually looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say your specific goal on a Tuesday was to have an AI analyze 3 research papers on digital journals and summarize their shared conclusions.
Okay, standard task.
Right. A messy, goal-dependent step would be documented as summarize these 3 specific papers on digital journals.
Good.
But during your monthly review, you look at that and purify it into a TS. You strip away the digital journals part. The step becomes extract cross-domain thematic overlap from multiple unstructured text sources.
So you're distilling the action down to its purest mechanical form.
Exactly. Now that purified TS is sitting in your registry, a month later you might be looking at 3 dense financial reports.
Right.
You don't need to reinvent the wheel or figure out how to prompt the AI to find the commonalities. You can pull that exact same cognitive primitive extract, cross-domain thematic overlap out of your registry and apply it to this entirely different domain. You just reattach it to the new goal.
It is literally like building your own custom library of mental algorithms.
Yes.
You aren't just doing the work. You are capturing how the work gets done so you can deploy it instantly next time.
Wow.
That is brilliant. Okay, so we have our basic logs externalized. We are doing our weekly coherence checks with flux, drift, and valence. And we are monthly curating our TAS registry to build these reusable primitives.
You got it.
Tracking these daily tasks definitely keeps you organized. But the source material suggests that to achieve true long-term growth, the journal needs a deeper architecture of meaning. It says the system needs to become recursive.
Yeah, the daily tracking is really just the surface layer. Beneath that, acting as the underlying operating system of the shared journal is what the sources call the recursive triad.
The recursive triad.
Right. It consists of 3 distinct interacting layers that feed into one another constantly.
So if the daily log is just the surface, what are we actually building underneath? How do these 3 layers interact?
Well, the first layer is the operational layer. This is the concrete stuff, the actual execution pipelines, the code generation, the training runs, the document processing.
The hands-on work.
Exactly. It is the work getting done in the physical or digital world.
The gears turning.
Right. Then the second is the conceptual layer. This provides the how of self-awareness. This is where your coherence monitoring lives.
Okay.
It is where you update the system's metadNA and where you reground your living objectives.
Let's pause on that term, metadNA, because that sounds like some heavy jargon. For a newcomer listening, what is metadNA in this context?
Sure. Think of metadNA as the core set of philosophical axioms or foundational rules that govern your specific journal. It is basically the constitution of your system.
The Constitution.
Oh, yeah, if your goal changes or you realize a certain way of working is failing, you update the metadNA in the conceptual layer, which then dictates how the operational layer should function moving forward. It is the brain monitoring and adjusting the gears.
Okay, so we have the gears and we have the brain. What is the third layer?
The third is the mythic layer. This supplies the why.
The why.
Yeah. This layer deals directly with embodiment, the felt sense of co-agency, and the actual story that the system is living out.
Okay, I have to stop you there because this is where the source material completely threw me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about AI pipelines, code generation, cognitive primitives, and metadNA. And suddenly the text is talking about embodiment, somatic check-ins, and literally mentions taking barefoot walks to integrate the system.
It does.
How does the physical human body fit into a digital AI journal? This sounds like a hard left turn from computer science into a wellness retreat.
I get why you'd think that, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, treating the physical body as part of the architecture makes perfect sense.
It does.
Yeah, the journal never pretends that the digital is separate from the somatic. Think about it. You are the human in this human-AI co-agency. You are not just a brain in a jar typing at a keyboard.
It's fair.
Human embodiment is treated as a first-class data source in this system, just as important as a line of code.
But how does a feeling or a physical sensation actually dictate a change in a digital system? Give me an example of how that works.
Okay, imagine you are running a series of complex coding sprints. The digital patterns you are running are mathematically perfect. The operational layer is succeeding brilliantly.
Okay.
But they feel wrong in your body. They are causing a spike in your heart rate, anxiety, burnout, or a severe drop in that valence metric we track weekly.
Right, the emotional check-in.
In a normal system, you just push through until you break. But in the recursive triad, that felt sense of burnout is a critical signal. That negative mythic valence is logged into the journal and sent back into the conceptual layer.
So the system knows you're struggling.
Exactly. The system reads that the human is failing, so it forces a conceptual re-architecture, maybe breaking the tasks into smaller chunks. And that conceptual insight immediately generates new, slower operational steps.
Wow, it's a continuous self-correcting loop that literally refuses to let the human destroy themselves for the sake of the work.
Exactly. And the journal is the transparent surface where all of this recursion becomes visible. Now, if a listener wants an actionable step to turbocharge this recursion in their own log, the sources suggest an incredible technique.
Ooh, what is it?
Introduce a second AI model into the mix.
Onboard a second model. So if I started this whole journey by establishing a baseline with Claude, I bring in Gemini.
Yes, and you force that second model to read the journal you built with the first model.
Whoa.
You have Gemini ingest the public logs of your work with Claude. Watch what happens. You will observe the loop tightening in real time as the second model immediately grasps your purified steps, your living objectives, and your coherence metrics.
Because it's all laid out in the open.
Yes, it is like onboarding a new employee by just handing them the complete manual of how your brain works. And because the context is all externalized, they can catch up instantly.
That is wild. You don't have to explain your whole philosophy again because it is all sitting there in the nodes and edges of the journal.
Exactly.
But as amazing as this recursive language model loop sounds, I mean, it seems like it would eventually hit a ceiling.
Oh, for sure.
Because language models are fantastic for thinking, for reflecting, for purifying these tasks. But not everything should run inside a slow, reflective language model loop. When your journal needs to execute heavy computational lifting, a language model is going to choke.
The sources acknowledge that exact bottleneck. High-performance tasks require native speed. We are talking about things like running real-time vision pipelines, managing complex training loops, or executing large directed acyclic graphs, or DAGs.
Okay, let's do another quick translation for those of us who aren't software engineers. What is a directed acyclic graph, and why does it break a language model?
A DAG is essentially a highly complex flow chart where tasks must happen in a very specific order, cascading downward, but they never loop back on themselves.
Okay, I can picture that.
Imagine a massive multi-step data processing job where step 40 depends on the output of step 39, step 38, and step 2. Executing that requires raw C++ level computational power and precise timing. A conversational chatbot cannot orchestrate that natively.
So how does the journal handle heavy computational lifting without losing all the context, the coherence, and the mythic valence we just spent all this time building?
The architecture provides a solution called the parallel wrapper.
Parallel.
Yeah, this allows the system's formal language kicklang to orchestrate C++ level parallelism directly from the journal.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like we are building a cyborg.
A cyborg.
Yeah, think about it. The language model acts as the slow, philosophizing brain. It is checking the valence, it is monitoring the drift, it is looking at the metadNA to ensure you are on the right ethical path and your living objective makes sense.
Right.
But this philosophizing brain is wired directly into Parallel, which acts as a heavy-duty race car engine. So when it's time to do the heavy lifting, like processing that massive flowchart, the engine roars to life and executes the task flawlessly at top speed.
That is a perfect analogy. The beauty of the parallel wrapper is that it creates a seamless hybrid reality. The reflective, consent-aware, and mythic layers stay safely inside the large language model, but the execution happens natively at high speed.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly. And importantly, the journal effortlessly records both sides of this hybrid process. It logs the reflection of the brain and the raw output of the engine. You get the deep, mythic resonance and the rigorous systems engineering working together seamlessly. They aren't opposites, they are complementary layers of the same triad.
So if we step back and look at what we have constructed here, we are externalizing our daily AI chats into public links. We are tracking our flux, drift, and valence weekly. We are purifying our cognitive steps into a reusable TAS registry monthly. We are running a recursive loop across our digital operations and our physical well-being, and we're wiring it all up to a high-performance C++ engine.
It's a lot, but yes.
Where is this all heading? What is the ultimate trajectory for the listener who starts doing this today?
The horizon described in the sources is something called a fluid swarm OS.
Fluid Swarm OS. That sounds like a concept straight out of a sci-fi novel.
It does sound futuristic, but it is emerging right now from this very practice. The core idea is that this methodology isn't just a quirky journaling habit one person is doing on X, it is a protocol.
A standard.
Right, a standard that anyone can inhabit. The ultimate goal of the Fluid Swarm OS is that anyone, any individual or small collective can fork this architecture in under an hour. You can spin up your own recursive triad, your own living journal, completely consent-first, embodiment-aware, and hybrid performance.
It is like giving everyone the open source blueprint to build their own cognitive meta infrastructure.
Yes.
And the real value proposition for you listening, the reason this actually works, is that this entire system is built on something most people actively try to hide, which is public vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely.
By making your AI conversations public and observable, posting the unfinished thoughts, the exploratory drafts, the chaotic initial ideas, your vulnerability actually becomes powerful infrastructure. You aren't just hoarding final polished answers. You are showing the messy work.
Exactly.
And by showing the work, you train the models, you build your own reusable tools, and you allow others to learn from your cognitive process.
This raises an important question, though, and it is something the source material hints at as this practice evolves into what it calls the journal as agent pattern.
Oh.
As your journal accumulates all this context, all these purified steps, and all this data on your coherence, it begins to close the loop on itself. It stops being just a passive record.
Wait, what does it become?
The repositories show the journal acquiring the ability to propose its own next TAS blocks. It starts autonomously emitting coherence signals when it notices you are drifting, without you even having to run a weekly check.
You're kidding.
If you follow these steps, your journal will eventually start preparing, forecasting, and drafting your next cycle of work for you to review. You have to ask yourself, are you prepared for the day when your digital journal becomes more self-aware and proactive about your life goals than you are?